Hey artists, in this video we're going to talk about our Google Drawing art project where we use an isometric dot grid to create a project. We are going to use the polyline tool to create letters or a maze. I'm going to show you both things in this video. So to start off, there are some reference images of a maze and an alphabetical isometric drawing. So I'm going to start off by creating the word art using the isometric dot grid. So you're going to use the polyline tool to click and trace using the dots as an anchoring guide. You're going to be able to double click on your shapes and adjust your shape using the mouse. So if you make a mistake, it's going to be easy for you to readjust the positioning of your shapes. Right now, I'm working on creating the letter A because I'm going to draw the word art using the isometric dot grid. One tip that will help you out is if you use a custom color that is translucent, and so I'm using a custom color that's 50% see-through or transparent. That's going to make it so that I can still see and count the dots that are on the isometric dot grid that's in your Google Drawing. Then I'm going to make sure that I create all of the shapes so that I'm able to recolor them. I want to recolor them using 3 values, a light, a medium, and a dark value. By using a light, a medium, and a dark value, I'm going to be able to create something that has a little bit more dimension and looks more realistic. So for the face of the letter, I've used a medium value. For the top and side of the letter, I'm using a lighter value, and for the shadows, I'm using a darker value. For the letter R, there is one dot that is halfway in the midpoint of the dot grid. Where the R curves in, it's in between those 2 dots. So I've created the entire face of the letter R. Then I'm going to make it a translucent color so that I can still see the dots as I'm working so that I know exactly where I should be making each one of my shapes. I'm going to utilize this feature so that way when I make the open space in the middle of the capital R, I'm able to see those dots that I'm tracing. Once I create all of the shapes for my word, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to recolor them using that value. If you make a mistake, it's okay, just double click on the shape and move those anchor points so that they're lined up with your dot grid. Then you can experiment with different values of the same hue, doing a monochromatic letter, or you can do a different design where you're just using different values and different colors. One thing that I like to do is turn the borders off and make them transparent so that way the outlines are gone, but I'm still able to see the shapes and make my letters look 3-dimensional. So for the last letter in my word, art, is T. So I'm going to use those tools, the polyline tool, and looking at my reference image of the letter T so that I can create the face of my letter T. And it's okay if my letters are in the wrong spot because I can slide them around and replace them on my canvas. So at first, I'm just focusing on creating all of those geometric shapes and not worried so much about the color. I can always change the colors later. It is helpful to use different values so that you can tell the difference between the face of the letter, the top, and the sides of the letter. Then you can really get zoomed in using the trackpad or the magnifying tool so that you can readjust your shapes so that there are no gaps. That's going to really refine your work and make it look much better. The next thing that I'm going to show you how to do is create a maze. For my maze, I'm going to create the top pattern of the maze, and I'm going to explore just creating one shape, clicking around, using the dots as an anchor point. That's going to be the top of my maze. Again, I'm going to use a translucent color so I can still see the dots. Then I'm going to create shapes coming downward to make it look more 3-dimensional. So every time that I find a corner, I'm going to make shapes that utilize the corners. I'm only going 1 box down. I could make the maze taller, but for keeping it simple, I'm just going to make it 1 box tall, almost like a cube. So every time I see a corner, I'm going to make 1 shape. I know right now it's a little bit confusing because all of those shapes are translucent blue, but it might be easier if you use different translucent values. Like some of them, translucent values I've made are orange. Then I'm going to click on all of the pieces that are not my face, and then I'm going to make them one value. The ones that are diagonally to the right, I'm going to make a different color. And then if you want to experiment with adding the border color, you could experiment with adding the borders. And don't forget to zoom in so that you can double click and refine the shapes in your maze. By playing with the different values and colors, you're going to make your maze look more three-dimensional. You can also use a solid fill color so that you do not see the maze anymore through the isometric dot grid. I can't wait to see what you create for your art project.